When most people think about how their home could be causing health problems, they think about mold, and that is where they stop. But today's episode is going to go much more in depth on some other things beyond mold, so stay tuned. Welcome back. My name is Sarah, and this is the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel. Today's episode is going to go in depth on home health, some of the things in your home that could be contributing to health problems, again, beyond mold. Now, mold is very important, and that is absolutely something that we cover in this episode, but there are a lot more things if you're thinking about designing a home or if you want to make the home that you live in a lot more healthy for you and your family. So I really encourage you to go into the timestamps. This was a very in-depth conversation with Brian Johnson of Synergy 360. And we really do go in depth on so many different topics. So please do check out those timestamps. They're going to be linked down in the show notes for you, as well as check out Brian. Now, I've told him several times when we get to the point where we can build our dream home, he is going to be a part of that because there's so many amazing things now that you can do when building your home to make it healthier for you and your family. Again, preventing mold, super important, but we can actually go far beyond that. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to thank a couple of sponsors. The first one is going to be Viva Rays. Now, one of the things that we talk about in this episode is how to make your home circadian friendly. For those of us that don't have the luxury of creating a circadian friendly home, I recommend the Viva Rays circadian glasses. Hello from my co-host James here. Now, these are wonderful at helping your cortisol levels stay where they need to stay. The thing about cortisol is it goes in a pattern. And if we have a rise of cortisol too early in the day, or again, too late in the day, this can cause sleep issues, weight issues, all kinds of autoimmune issues. So I love the Viva Rays circadian glasses for helping me to protect my circadian rhythms. You can use my code YOGI to save 15% on yours. The second sponsor of today's episode is going to be Optimal Carnivore. Another great way to support my brain and my body are their products. I love their desiccated organs. That is how I've supported myself prenatally and how I am supporting myself after the baby. Their Brain Nourish product is also absolutely amazing, especially since I'm getting a little bit less sleep these days. It helps to increase BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor, helps you to think clear. So if you're struggling with brain fog, check out Optimal Carnivore. Use my code carnivore uppercase Y to save 10%. Links in the show notes. All right, let's go ahead and jump on into this episode. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm super excited to have here with me today Brian Johnson, who is the owner of Synergy 360. We're going to talk about your home, something that we haven't talked about on this show, and how, creating a safe home environment can be an absolute health upgrade. So Brian, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to be here, to be able to bring the message and share the message with you and your audience. And really to get this out, I've been a general contractor for 25 years and, been on this biohacking adventure for the last 10 years. And really found out in construction, I was actually exposed to a lot of mold because I was the contractor identifying to bring in the mold specialists and the mold abatement contractors. So believe it or not, I got into the whole biohacking thing more from a performance perspective, come to find out that I had a lot of mold toxicity because I was exposed in all these environments. Okay. And to be truthful, as a GC, like I didn't realize how toxic mold was. It was kind of like, oh, you see guys wearing the suits. Oh, we're tough guys in the field. That's not going to bother us. Right. So I kind of had that, I'll be honest, I had that mentality, and we exposed ourselves to a lot of chemicals. And so that's where I have that understanding from that side. So as I got more into performance and again, just using all the different modalities and the cutting edge technologies, I started to become more aware of the importance of understanding molds and, EMFs and all these different environmental exposures within the home. And So I knew I was waiting the time because I was like, okay, as my, what can I contribute? What can I bring? Okay, well, I'm a builder. I can build these amazing homes, but I want to build these special homes. And how do I do it? So I studied, I would say in the last 5 years extensively, because I did a lot of lifestyle coaching as well, understanding, red light therapy and understanding circadian rhythm. And of course, I understood, mold lurking behind the walls and in the sources of a structure breaking down and water penetrating into the home, so on and so forth. So I really, really dissected and broke down everything. And I said, why aren't we building this within the home? And I'm like, there's got to be people out there. So I spent years kind of researching, and, somebody might take EMF mitigation specific, or somebody might take mold mitigation specific, or somebody might look at lighting. So it was just always kind of all over the board,
Yeah.
And I built a home here in Tucson, Arizona, from the ground up, measuring for the geopathic stressors, doing the dowsing rods and everything, bringing in some feng shui and some harmonization into the area that we were going to build. From the ground up, I built this very holistic home, bringing all the cutting edge technologies, all the way from circadian lighting to very sophisticated water treatment systems who you've done interviews with, Natural Actions.
Yes.
So, and that's another thing too, because it's like I've really sourced out who, in my opinion, who I follow seems to be the most cutting edge and follow the technology of specific to their trade. And so I really look for a lot of mentorship with a lot of people in the manufacturing side of things too. So, and then again, mold, we're looking at, building a mold-free structure, and, and then also too, talking about the structure, you have green, versus sustainability, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes building a green home, sometimes it's kind of a balance, right?
Yeah.
We want the home to be sustainable. We don't want a rainstorm to come and melt our home away back into the earth.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to do a lot of understanding and research, looking at different methods of building and finding the most sustainable way to build, to find, because then you get into the manufacturing of VOCs, all the VOC, volatile organic compounds, and formaldehydes and all the chemicals that they use in manufacturing. So, so it was about 5 years ago, I really started putting this model together. In 3 years, I started building this home. One thing that I want to bring in too is, later on, as I put this together, I thought I can't be the only one. So as I kept searching and searching, I came across what's called the Building Biology Institute.
Yes.
Yes. And I'll tell you, it was really interesting. It was such a godsend for me, because I'm like, how is it so late in the game as a builder am I finding the Building Biology Institute? Because their lineage comes all the way back from post World War II, when they found, after the war, then they modernized, and that's where a lot of chemicals, because then they were fast producing homes, and then they found people were becoming sick versus homes post, pre to that. And so there's a lot of history for building biology. So recently, in the more later years, I came across building biology, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a godsend. Because I was already looking at it from a very sophisticated standpoint of like this biohacker, if you will, and a builder, and then really kind of bringing it all together. Okay. Building biology, they're looking at really building a healthy home. They're looking at building the structure. And we can reference the book too, because I encourage everybody to read the book. You can literally build your own healthy home. Not that everybody actually physically wants to build it, but to have the understanding. Okay. So I applied a lot of the philosophies of building biology into this home that I built here in Tucson, Arizona. So the structure, I built the structure using mold resistant materials, for one. So we looked at harmonizing the area. We looked at bringing in feng shui and different ways of harmonization. We we brought in a structure that was using mold resistant materials, and then of course using methodologies to drain water properly, because we want to drain water away from the structure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's a really important thing, right?
Yeah.
And and good builders too. There's good builders out there that really build quality, that understand, that exceed codes. So they're already kind of building biology, but more from just an integral, an integral perspective of, they just want to build a good house, right? But also too, I'm kind of bouncing around in here, but I'm just kind of giving a little bit of history, the different forms of building. You start getting into mass production homes.
Those are huge here right now. It's this home that we're in right now was custom built home. The builder doesn't even build homes like this. Is a middle class person's home. He doesn't build homes like this anymore. He only builds multi-million-dollar homes now. He's kind of moved out, but the quality of this house is impeccable. But a few streets over, we've got they're the same price as this house, which is insane to me. But I can look at them and tell you the walls are paper thin. They're right next to each other. They're just like multiple manufacturers. There's like 30 of them in the little walking area. So those are really popular here where I live in Atlanta, and we wouldn't even entertain something like that. We're like, no, because it's not good quality, right?
Well, and it's not to really knock, and because I don't want to knock any companies or contractors, but it's an oversight. Not that they purposely do it, but there's so many trades involved, and there's so much overlapping. There's so many things that are missed. It could be flashing details around windows, around drip edges, around the roofs. That's because we're kind of right now we're talking more of protecting ourselves from the element, right, and creating this safe sanctuary in this environment. And so that's the difference. So when these homes are just mass produced, there's just a communication breakdown because there's just too many trades involved and things go wrong in this mass production. Or just a builder that just that just isn't in equality and building a good quality home. So there's a lot of good builders out there, but that's where I think we have an opportunity to really, thanks to people like you and all your listeners, we have an opportunity to really educate and really bring this to the forefront. Like, hey, this is a real serious deal, and every home should be built as a healthy home, no matter what level of construction, right? No matter what price range. Yes, it is expensive once you start getting into all these different, anti-EMFs and RFs and lighting systems. It can get really costly, getting into the $1 million homes. But we want to make this, my goal is to make it practical for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, back into the methodology of the construction that I built here. Again, we're looking at building everything from water intrusion. We're looking at sourcing all the materials, whether we're using lumber or we're using cement or, what kind of systems we're using. We're looking at using materials that mold cannot grow on or that, that resist, using different types of inhibitors and things like that. Using forms of different types of plasters, drywall that does not allow mold to grow on it.
Wow.
Using paints that have antimicrobial and of course that are non-VOC. So we're looking at using insulation. That's a big one. Insulation. We're looking at using insulation that doesn't promote any mold growth. Or bugs. That bugs can burrow into.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So
I live in Georgia, so I'm familiar with mold and bugs.
Yeah,
like big time.
Yeah, and termites are an issue, so
yeah. Oh yeah, big time.
That's another thing too. So it's like, again, it's that green versus sustainability. You build too much of a green home, you're going to have a lot of bugs.
They're going to eat you alive. Yep.
So yeah, so again, that's that perfect balance of the sustainability. So that pretty much covers, again, water drainage, proper gutter systems.
Oh yeah.
Proper flashing, right? Getting the water away from the structure. That's a big one. Then getting into, so we've pretty much covered all the, another thing too, like on the wall finishes, like the old school method, and they used to do a lot of plaster, like in Europe. Well, plaster in a home, like a lime plaster, is amazing because what it actually helps is acclimate the interior of the home by adjusting the relative humidity based upon the temperature in the room or in the structure. Okay. Even mold resistant drywalls, which are real practical, and it makes sense to build. So I don't want to knock that down because it is a viable way, but we can use mold resistant drywalls. But the thing about that too is that once you paint it, it's just kind of this hard surface that doesn't really help acclimate anything. It's a real dry product, So then we relied more into, and I'll talk about a little bit on air quality. Indoor air quality, which is huge, right? Because so we're looking for that perfect climate zone. And there's a zone in there between I think it's 35 to like 60% relative humidity, with temperatures fluctuating between 72 and 80 degrees, somewhere in there. And it's really, obviously it's nice for personal comfort, of course, right? But it's also important to really maintain the environment that really acclimates properly within the home too, keeping that relative humidity down. And so we look at indoor air quality. There's a lot of tests that I do when I go in and I'm measuring different VOCs and, particulate matters, and, because we can pick up, formaldehydes and chemicals and, pollen and things in the air and allergens and things like that, right? So we're looking to measure, and that's another thing too, because you have your, a typical HVAC company, again, mass production, they're just slamming in the HVAC systems. They're not doing any air quality tests.
No,
right?
No.
They're not, I think now we're starting to see everyone's using more lower VOC. But you unless you know the source, you don't know what you're really buying. So the indoor air quality HVAC systems, I really look at bringing in sophisticated types of air scrubbing using like UV catalytic UV systems. And what these catalytic UV systems is, they'll actually take out pathogens, viruses, allergens, mold, dust, all these different types of things. It'll actually take it out of the air. And so it's beautiful to have. I recommend it and you can do them aftermarket too, to put in an air scrubber. And if you have like a standard HVAC system, and they make them for split systems as well, but it'll actually scrub the air of all these particulate matters, which is brilliant, And another thing to that too is bringing in a passive airflow into the home. So, back in the day, probably our mom or parents, we used to open up and close the windows and let the fresh air,
I do it now. It drives my husband crazy because we're in Georgia and the AC bill was like $300 this summer. He's like, what? You've got to stop opening these damn windows. I'm like, trust me, I'm doing it for our health and our circadian rhythms. But it's not, whenever I do that, I get in trouble. But it's a health consideration, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's a fresh air exchange.
Yeah.
And now, but at the same time, it's based upon, so when we're doing air, the index, and we're measuring the air, we're capturing the outside air too. Right. And a lot of the times too, we'll do actually air spore collection. And so we always do our baselines from the outside to compare the outside to the inside. So that's kind of that's a little bit of a tricky one, depending on your air quality of where you live and your environment.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's why we always look at passive airflow is important into whatever kind of a heating and air system you have. You want to be able to bring in the outside air in, but it's super important to precondition and then filter that outside air coming in. Okay. And then of course, here's a big thing too, kind of talking about the temperature and the relative humidity, putting dehumidification systems, that's really key. It's kind of an oversight, unfortunately. But a lot of manufacturers, like the big name brands, they recognize that and they bring in systems. So we're looking at bringing in a passive, they're called ERVs. They're ERV systems where it brings in outside air, preconditions, it filters it, and then it pumps it in to your AC or your heating system. And then you would treat it with a UV lighting system, which would neutralize. So if there was any particulate matter for the exterior coming in passively, then you're actually scrubbing and cleaning that air. So you're bringing in fresh air and you're cleaning it just in case there's any particulate matter, and then you're circulating it through the home. So passive is really important.
Nice. Yeah. I always hope that because we're surrounded by so many trees that it helps a little bit with the quality.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I know we do live in the city, so we got to be a little more careful. Yeah, I think that a lot of people are kind of hip to the idea that, they need to have good air quality. I don't know a lot of people that are really understanding this whole issue of two things you've brought up that I'd love to explore deeper with my audience. Number one, because I really have kind of hit home the idea of circadian rhythms with my audience. And you've had Dr. Cruz on, had a ton of different circadian health experts on the podcast. So I think they really do understand the importance of circadian rhythms. And we just try to hack the house, no overhead lights on at certain, after sunset, no overhead lights on, and we have special bulbs all around the house. But how do you kind of do that with your homes that you custom build? I'd love to hear that. That sounds fascinating.
Absolutely. So, with my understanding of lighting systems and the different wavelengths and the frequencies, and then, of course, the big thing is the flicker, right?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge one.
Yeah. For a light bulb to come into my home, I have to put it on slow-mo mode on my phone and film it. It has to pass the slow-mo test.
Well, they actually make, not that everybody wants to go out and buy a meter.
Buy a meter. I know they have the meters.
That, yeah.
I know they do.
Yeah.
Next on my list.
Oh yeah. But just, I think the best, a lot of manufacturers. So, LED, when we went from incandescent to, fluorescent, to LED, when the LED first hit the market, they weren't even adjusting that. They had the worst flicker rate of any
terrible
light. And then the spectrums, they weren't even dialed in. And, when all the health authorities and local building codes start to recognize certain wavelengths of color for, hospitals and schools, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's something definitely there, because now they're going more to the warmer tones, or, everything's adjustable. And so knowing lighting, I sourced out, and there's manufacturers that manufacture architectural lighting for new construction. There are some remodel options, but they recognize it more from they don't look at it so much from the circadian aspect. Some do, but they look at it for just quality of lighting for architectural purposes, for artwork or ambiance and things like that, right? So if you know what you're looking for, you can find these very ultra low flickering. Now they've got RGB technology, which is red, green, blue with white, and they're tunable. And so you could tune them into 60. It gets a little expensive once you start going this route.
Yeah.
But you can go anywhere from just an adjustable white light that has a 3800 high wavelength of noon down to 1600K that simulates the sun setting, right?
Yep. That's what all my bulbs are, 1600K in the house.
Yeah.
Drives my husband insane. He's like, I can't tell what color my damn socks are. I'm like, go outside.
Well, that's a good point there too. So that's why it's nice to have, even if, you could even split it up. So the house here that I built, we have 64 lights, all recessed lighting to give nice even lighting that goes from a 3800 down to the 1600K. So every room is adjustable. You can even get fancy and put photo sensors on it and actually adjust to the time of the sun. It's really cool. There's some really cool stuff out there. Yeah. But you could also build in, if you have the luxury building new, I recommend building cove like a cove into the ceiling. You could even do it into the floor too.
That's what I was going to say. The floor
yeah,
would be the ideal place to have your lighting.
Well, it is, because then you have the different, so imagine 64 different wavelengths of non-flickering color from either the floor or the top, and you could even mix the colors.
Switch them, yeah.
So for every room, you could have a different mood setting.
Oh yeah.
Now, as far as like your husband not being able to identify his socks, you know, like if you wanted a red and he wanted a purple or whatever, like you guys would have to compromise the light on that room. However, you just simply throw on the switch and you can override with your normal lighting of your 1600K, but you could also turn it up to, you know, 2400, so you can at least identify to see what it is that you're working with. So there is a lot of amazing technology. You just have to know what you're looking for. In new construction, they do offer different like remodel options now too. I mean, you can remodel anything, you know.
Totally.
It gets expensive once you start cutting into walls and things, right?
Exactly.
You know, as far as bulbs, now they're starting to really identify, if you see something that's dimmable, and a dimmable LED, you know, in a 1600K that's dimmable. I've tested them out, and believe it or not, even from Home Depot, the bulbs, just your standard incandescent, or, you know, your what do they call it? A T19, you know, thread in type. They measure very low flicker rate.
Really?
So typically, you want to look for an LED that's dimmable, and they're doing a lot better with the technology now. So
you can
find
I think there's like
home.
A lot of people in the circadian world just throw LED out and say, never get LEDs, but all of my 1600K bulbs are LEDs and they're non-flickering. I do have a few Edison style incandescents in different areas, but I find LEDs are okay, right? Do you find that as well?
LEDs the way to go. They've really, again, it was more from the studio kind of filming quality, because they couldn't have the flickering, right? For the video.
Yeah, exactly.
And they needed certain hues. I mean, they have professional crews that come in and they measure the wavelengths of light. And so it was used mainstream for filming and commercial applications, of course, and then it trickled into the residential. And right now we're seeing a real big peak of having accessibility on a residential. I mean, LED is the way to go now, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Yeah, because now I think the administration that's currently in office has made incandescents. He's trying to like get rid of them completely, from what I've heard some news stories about that. So
they're hard to find. I bought
I have a ton.
I bought a pretty big stash.
Me too. I have a huge stash in my kitchen. My husband's like, you're not putting those up. He hates the incandescents. I'm like, I had to get them before they're illegal.
Yes, you know, incandescents, you know, they're nice, you know.
I like them.
Yeah, they're a good light to them, but they do flicker.
They do. So, they actually do. I was shocked when I started getting out my camera and doing a little filming. I was like, oh, these guys are flickering. I had no idea. And then I'm filming my LEDs. I'm like, no flicker. That's, you know, so got to do. And I'm going to get a meter eventually. I had to spend my money getting a tri-field. So a tri-field, a lux meter. Like my husband's like, really? Do you need what is That's what I did before we moved into this house, is I walked around with a tri-field trying to identify what areas we needed to kind of mitigate, work on. We did Y shield paint in the bedrooms because we are in a city, we are near 5G towers. So yeah. And then when you do Y shield, which I'd love to kind of pick your brain a little bit about that, you can't be you know, I had the tri-field in there, and the smoke alarm that was on the ceiling had Wi-Fi enabled. So that's not something you want in a child's or in a bedroom period. Definitely not a child's bedroom, is Y shield paint with a source of non-native EMF blasting from the ceiling, because that's actually just going to make it worse in that room, right?
Yes. Yeah. Because so you're getting into the shielding to mitigate EMFs. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword too, right? Because now you're just reflecting a signal, and it could be, the signal could come in from the size of a pinhead, believe it or not. You know, you could have if you had a cell tower pretty close by and you did all your shielding, you could have a pinhole and that signal still coming in, you know? So Yeah, it's a little bit because I've had, people ask like, hey, why am I still getting a signal with my cell phone in a bedroom when it's supposed to be completely
shielded?
So it's completely shielded. But phones are pretty amazing too, because they can pull like different forms of low level signal. And so like I've measured them, and it's not too bad, but of course, we don't want it in our room when we're sleeping, of course.
Right.
But yeah, to the shield.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode with Brian. As I said, there is a lot in this episode, so make sure you're utilizing those timestamps. And if you get a moment, please give this video a like and leave us a comment. It will help to get the video out to more people. Share it. And I always love to hear from you guys down there in what resonated the most with you in this video. What was the most helpful? Something maybe that you did not know before you watched the video. Helps me to continue to bring on guests to help you on your health journey and keeping your family as healthy as humanly possible. That is the goal here in this channel. So thank you again for being here. Please share this video out with anyone who you feel could find the information useful. And I just want to thank one more sponsor here as we go. Upgraded Formulas is my go-to for making sure that my minerals are where they need to be for optimal mood, optimal sleep. And then if you're experiencing something like fatigue, a lot of times there is a mineral imbalance. It could be something as simple as sodium and potassium. I find a lot of people that do a lower carb diet for an extended amount of time end up with a lower potassium level. So check out the hair tissue mineral analysis from Upgraded Formulas. You can use my code YOGI12 or YOGI if you've already used YOGI12 to save on that HTMA with a consultation. You're definitely going to want some guidance there if you decide to add some minerals in or to read those results. They can be a little confusing. Things may look one way on paper and they're not actually the true result. So thank you again to Upgraded Formulas for sponsoring today's episode. And thank you guys again for watching. My little co-host here is about to jump on the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and get us back into the episode. Thank you again for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, to the shielding, I think it has to be done very carefully. Of course, windows,
yeah, that was one thing. We sealed all the windows in my daughter's room. We actually painted them, shielded them.
Oh, did you? Okay.
She's very, very sensitive. I mean, she's the one with autism. She's super sensitive to non-native EMF. She has extreme hypersensitive to non-native EMF. So she's got a Magnetico sleep pad. The walls, we did special stuff to kind of seal the windows. And yeah, but since we've moved in this house, she's never slept better in her entire life. I mean, doesn't wake up, doesn't get up. I mean, she sleeps amazing. So
yes,
I know we did something right. So hopefully we can get my son when he's born. His bedroom is shielded, but we didn't do the window stuff. So we'll see how that goes.
They make film for Windows specific.
Yeah.
That's and you could, and it's pretty, they're very effective. They're 100% attunement. But they're not, nice thing about them, you can get them in reflective, you can get them in gray or a bronze, you can do a 0 tint all the way to a 25% tint. So because it's always nice to be able to have that accessibility to a natural light, of course, in the room.
Definitely.
So the shielded window films are really sweet. Matter of fact, these windows behind me, these are all shielded.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. But back to the EMFs, on a new construction, I highly recommend, you can put a switch that will kill the power to the entire room.
Yeah, we have that. We have a kill switch.
Okay.
Yeah. I keep it beside the bed and I'm like, before we go to bed. Yep.
Because of course, a lot of us have the convenience, outlets when we have, something plugged in.
Plugged in. Yeah. That's the other thing that drove my husband crazy. I'm like unplugging everything. He's like, I can't turn on the damn light. I'm like, sorry.
Good for you. So did you have the switch wired in with an electrician?
No, I kind of just did it myself, which I don't
Did
even.
You?
Yeah. I figured my husband's the one who went to Georgia Tech, but I'm the one who was like, I got to try to biohack this, figure this out so that we can, try to make this work. So hopefully I did it right. But yeah, I've got the kill switch beside the bed, so everything
Good for
goes
you.
out.
And you're killing all the courtesy outlets through the entire room.
Wi-Fi, bedrooms, pretty much everything upstairs. Yeah, because all the
Okay,
bedrooms
perfect.
and everything are upstairs, and so yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I think that's a big one for the audience. If they could seek out a way to be, we want our convenience. So don't get me wrong.
yeah,
We do want the power when we want it, but it is
yeah,
nice to know that when you kill that switch, that there's no EMFs. And of course, the meters, it's always nice to have some form of a meter. I use the Safe and Sound.
oh yeah, that's yeah,
That one is, and I've got a lot of meters. That one is really sweet. It's inexpensive. And you can constantly adjust and check to kind of see where your numeric values are, measuring your, all your microwatts per square meter. And there's guidelines, of that. They say, anything under 100 microwatts per square meter. And then even for maybe even like your daughter or electromagnetic sensitive individuals, it could be as down to 50 to 20 microwatts per square meter. And if everything is shielded properly, you should be able to keep it down to practically a zero.
A zero. Yeah, I try to get a zero in her room.
Yeah.
That's my goal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Which,
so
yeah.
Well, it's good. So it's, not to, again, so as a builder building healthy homes, my goal is not to build fear or,
right.
Tell everybody you have to have $10,000 in gauges and this and that and the other. But the beauty is it's being aware of it, and then coming up with simple remedies to mitigate those things, and just having certain key things just so you have the power, and you have the power to yourself to be able to know or control the situation, right? And that's why these little meters are just really, really nice to have. The nice thing about the shielded paint too is, so you keep in mind you have your Romex, your power going through the wall, right? And you have to be really close to the source for it to really have much of an effect. But it is nice knowing on this particular house, I shielded the whole house.
Wow.
And it's really amazing too. There's other alternatives to shielded paint. So somebody's building new, they could use an MC cable.
Okay.
An MC cable is a shielded cable. And the way that it's grounded, the way that it's shielded, there's virtually no magnetic force coming from that cable, which is really sweet.
Nice.
But the shielded coatings, they do eliminate that as well. So they both work. I would say if you're trying to go for 100%, the shielded coatings are great. But the MC cable is the next best thing, because if you're going to shield the entire house, it can be costly and it's very challenging.
Just
it's
the
not an easy
shielding
process.
paint for the bedrooms was probably $1,000. It was really expensive. My husband's like, and then then you don't realize the shielding paint's black, and so our painters were just like,
oh,
what the hell? Because we had we wanted, this room is a baby blue, this room is a green, this room is a pink, and it took us probably 4 or 5 tries to get the color correct, because you've got the black underneath it, and then you have to our painters were like, we're never working with this crazy family again.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too, because you start getting into, just a little segue here, but we'll tie it together. Bringing in the contractors again, it's, if you're working with a trade or a sub, it has to be with somebody really outside of the box. Okay. And it's really important as the builder and the homeowner to communicate okay, hey, this is what we want. Are you comfortable with this? And are you open? Because it's not just they're going to come in there and spray one coat, right? Type of a thing. It's not like that at all. It's a very, very complex system. And so it's being transparent to the trade, but the trade being transparent to you that they're willing to take that on, to deal with all those little nuances that come into play, because you have to prime, you have to double coat. You have to prime a couple times again, and then you have to paint. So it's a
exactly.
challenge.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, that's why we only did the bedrooms because it's like 4,000 square feet. We're like,
Oh, yeah.
no, we just bedrooms.
Yes.
That's all we can really afford to do anyway.
No, and that, you know what, and that's really wise, because those are the areas that that you really, in me, my personal opinion, that we want to really mitigate, and try to
Protect.
go for 100%, because that's where we're recharging the batteries and
Mm-hmm.
resetting ourselves and getting that circadian rhythm all into place. So we're looking at, so the different forms of EMFs are RF, radio
Mm-hmm.
frequency, of course, which we discussed with the meters, picking that up. And then, EMFs, which would be more milligauss, measuring the magnetic force coming through the walls. So between the lighting, a kill switch, ways to cut down the electromagnetic field and the radio frequency fields in the room, trying to think of what else for the room. Of course, we're blacked out curtains. So
Of
if you're always,
course. Oh, those were installed well before we moved in. Those are necessary.
yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
I
so
want to
there's,
talk about windows for a second though,
yeah,
because most windows are going to block out infrared, red, UV. Do you guys do
yes.
anything special? I know you just mentioned shielding, but do you do anything special with like quartz glass, or are those still going to block out a lot of the light rays also?
Yeah, just because of the
The
codes
shielding
and
aspect.
yeah, just the thermal value,
Mm-hmm.
uh for condensation, and
Mm-hmm.
again adjusting humidity. There's different types of double pane, triple pane types of
Mm-hmm.
that have to meet building codes. So you're kind of stuck with kind
Stuck.
of the standardized, what the manufacturers recommend, as far as like Energy Star rated,
Got it.
low E energy efficient types of glass and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard a couple people say, oh, if you can get someone to put quartz glass on your new house, that's the best thing to do. But I've never really seen anyone actually go through that process before. So that's why I was
I
curious.
couldn't pull up anything. I couldn't find it. It's you when we're getting into like this level, it's there's a lot of research involved,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of really making it mainstream too,
Mm-hmm.
and accessibility to the materials. So again, as a builder, building a healthy home too, we're looking at, we need to vet the sources.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
there's alternatives for drywall out there, and just to share with the audience, it's called magnesium oxide board. They call
Mm.
it MGO board. Okay. It's a phenomenal product, but the manufacturers, they struggle. There's been failures with the materials. There's struggles even getting the materials. And so it sounds like a great plan when you're like, okay, this is great. All right, here's my timeline for construction. Drywall is going to be delivered in this time. Well, you have to really vet and know that these materials are going to be available, whether you can get crystal glass, or, whether you
Right.
get this material, that material. That could be a real big issue, when you're building a home. Come to find out, you can't even get the material because there was some supply chain issue or some kind of a
Oh, yeah.
failure. Because again, it's an evolution, right? We're in this good, I feel like we're in a good time, because again, like LEDs, like really perfected in my perspective,
Yeah.
from a quality of lighting. But we're still, looking at taking a lot of the chemicals out, but still having something sustainable. So I think we're in a really good place right now. Again, we're still having supply chain issues, just because of the aftermath of everything. But I believe there's good products out there, and we just really have to source and make sure that we can get access to these materials. And they've been tested too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want
Yeah.
your home to be a testing ground for all these materials. And
No.
you know
No.
and it happens. It's
Oh,
out there.
yeah. Oh, I'm
So
sure. I'm sure. Well, I guess on the same line as non-native EMF, we were talking a little bit before I turned on the recording about how all the new homes these days are just built with like all this like quote unquote like smart technology everywhere, which is a
yes.
complete nightmare for non-native EMF. And I hope my audience is familiar with why we don't really want a lot of non-native EMF in our home environment, especially in our sleep environment,
Mhm.
because it disrupts that recovery process, melatonin, apoptosis,
Yes.
autophagy, all that stuff. Non-native EMF is a silent form of light. It's an
Yes.
invisible form of
Yes.
light. There's research that shows how it dehydrates the body out of Dr. Gerald Pollack's lab.
Mhm.
There's more research out of Washington State University that shows how it floods the cells with calcium, which is not something we want. So how do you kind of circumvent all this like smart technology? Do you hardwire homes to give them
Yes.
like these upgrades, or how do you work with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we were discussing earlier, like, homes that were, built maybe 15, even 10 years back, that was kind of about that turn where we started
Mhm.
going everything's
I'm
smart,
smart.
right?
Yep.
And this would be nice because we'll tie the RF kind of back into everything
Yeah.
too. That, but some builders, like there's some builders that actually still hardwire everything, which is really cool.
That's
Because
nice.
they're giving the client, because everybody still wants to hardwire for like the connectivity and the
Yeah.
reliability, right?
That's why I mean, yeah, absolutely. We're on a hard line right now.
Same here. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And there's cool little, there's dongles, and maybe we can even reference something. I don't know if you already have Tech Wellness. There's different
Yeah,
products out there.
I'm trying to get August to come on here and chat with me.
Oh, that would be brilliant, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of synergy.
I've bought a
between,
ton of stuff
yes.
from her. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 So going, so talking about that hardwiring, like for example, every house that I build, I hardwire it. So
Mhm.
again, it's kind of, you're working with in the early design, you want to set up a little bit. It's kind of going back like 20 years ago when we had automation through the home. Like there was
Yeah.
a room full of just, servers and, transformers, and it was
Yep.
everything, and all of our routers for all the Ethernet cables go, and phone handling systems.
We still have that in this house, luckily, because my
That's
IT
great.
guys didn't have a hell of a time hardwiring everything up. It wasn't as hard as they thought it was going to be.
Yes.
But yeah, that's is non-existent in brand new homes.
Gone, right?
Yeah.
There's not even a such thing as an IT room, because everything's
Right.
coming in just wireless automatically, right?
Yep.
All the refrigerators, dishwashers,
Yep.
ranges, oh geez, just almost everything is going Wi-Fi. But where was I going with that? The IT room. So it's nice to plan out, again, if you're building. So we're talking about building,
Right.
to plan out an area to run all your IT cabling, and hardwire and methodically think it through on where you want all your data to run, to all your rooms, your ports, to your kitchen. Because again, we're going back to a land, back to a wire. And now we don't want to be inconvenienced, and especially the younger generation, right? They're like, what? I don't want to be toggled in or wired in, But I think once we educate the difference to understand, it's like, hey, technology is going a little too quick, and it's actually going to cause some harm. And these are
then
ways
mix mold in with that.
Yes.
Mold and non-native EMF is a freaking total health disaster.
those are really the two big factors that we look at in building. Again, it's building that mold resistant structure, and it's building that EMF free zone as well. Right, because those are the two big things, and then we get to tie the luxury with the water treatment, the circadian lighting systems. But it's really hardwiring everything for convenience, specifically to where you want to be. And then you could just have short cables where you're literally plugging your iPads, your phones, your computers, TVs. So kind of talking about like these devices, a printer. Right? A printer could be looking for a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi signal, throwing actually a pretty high value. Of course, the washer machines and things like that, they're constantly looking. So you have to find ways to be able to hardwire them in and make sure all that stuff's turned off. Some don't even come. You have to actually bypass all that. So that's a really important thing too, is just bringing in a clean line from outside. it branches out through the entirety of the home, so you can be hardwired everywhere you need to be, and you're literally mitigating all of that aspects, making sure all devices are turned off, and talking about like smart meters and all these different things, right? So in building, you have a luxury of putting you can have meters set away, but again, if you're in a neighborhood, now your neighbor, if they're not mitigated, like they have the exposures. So but for the house itself, it's always good to have all your power source and everything built away, from in the garage. Again, kind of there was one piece like a refrigerator, like there's obvious power sources that you don't want up against your room, right? You don't want to be sleeping on the opposite side of your refrigerator, because they do throw out, big forms of electromagnetic frequencies too. So we're strategically looking at how we're placing rooms and the panels and where the smart meters are located in relationship to these areas as well. I think is something important to note. Or if it is, there's ways to mitigate it. There's different, again, it could be a graphite coating, but you might even need more of a heavier duty mylar type of coating too, to protect these sources. Again, if you have no choice and you're living somewhere and there's a meter on the backside of your bedroom wall, there are ways to mitigate that too. So, but also, there's ways to, when you're pouring a foundation, of putting different forms of copper into the foundation to reduce that, again, that non-atom EMF from coming up through the ground. Because if you're in a very populated area, you're pulling. So I kind of early on thought, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do all kinds of grounding rods and and exceed what the building code is, but that's the opposite. Because now if you're grounding too much, you just want to be within the code, because you want it to be safe for power surges, lightning, things like that, just for it to dissipate, right? But you just want to follow the code on that, not get too crazy. But what I do is there's different matting systems that you can actually put into the slab, the foundation, or you can put under the tile that reduce anything coming up from the ground as well. And I know that, of course, they make all the different, rugs and things like that too, so that's just a simple remedy, but if you have the luxury of building new, there's ways to, especially if you're doing concrete on the ground, it is an antenna. It is bringing energy up from the ground for sure.
Because you can ground on concrete, you can ground on pretty much anything but asphalt. So you got to be careful. With the copper, are there any benefits to where you could gather some electrons that way, or is it just totally kind of blocking it out?
It's actually, you do, it's just blocking out. It's blocking it out. It is blocking it out.
Well, I mean, I was just curious. In a perfect world, you get, but very cool.
But here's the thing too. Okay, so if we're in a rural area and we're in the country, you don't have to go that extreme, because then you are bringing in a very clean source, right? For the most part.
Exactly.
Versus, again, if you're and that's kind of where I was going with that. But if you're building in a very, very
densely
big
populated
community, densely populated area, I think it would be more beneficial to actually find ways to mitigate that. If you could.
Got it.
In that case.
That's why we rely on more like the Magnetico sleep pads and making sure we get off the grid to try to hike and do things like that, rather than a ton of grounding around here, because it's a very densely populated area. So
that and what, that's just, really, I think that's the best. Again, it's bringing the modalities into the home too, right? So if you're in a densely populated area, it makes a lot of sense to bring these types of factors into the home, because my goal, we can't all just build in nature and a cabin in the woods and things like that. So, but the goal is to really bring nature and the outside element into the home,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
we're spending it. Well, the overall value is like it's a high percentage of what people spend indoors. So,
Right.
why
Right.
not, why not do the best you can to really bring that nature into the home, and you move in energy in other ways. There's different harmonization methods, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've
Uh,
got all kinds of things around the house too for that. We've got Lila Q and
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I really, there's really, you know, there's kind of an interesting piece too that I've been kind of delving into, and I would love to find a way to really make it mainstream. But it's muscle testing,
Oh yeah.
doing all apply to kinesiology to find out, hey, is something really affecting you?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have, I'm a big fan of Lila Q, and matter of fact, I have my I keep
Got your
the
Q. Oh,
yeah, so
nice.
I have it,
Very
so
nice.
we have those luxuries, but
Yeah,
can
mine's
we
in the right
quantify
behind me in
it?
the kitchen. Yeah.
We can't put our meter, because a lot of, there's
Right.
like,
It
well,
doesn't do anything when you put a
it
meter up
doesn't.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where like the muscle testing and kinesiology would come into play. So how beautiful would that be? And that's where like a lot of biogeometry, and I don't know a
Mm,
lot about biogeometry, other than I'm aware of, it's using sacred geometry and
yeah.
different, talking about harmonization. There's a whole avenue that you can get into with the whole biogeometry using, again, dowsing rods or pendulums,
Yes.
to measure, the stressors, for your exposure, your stressor to the environment, and then of course the environmental stressor. So they use
Right.
different methodologies to measure that, but there's the other method of applied kinesiology to see, if something at your home really serves you well or not. So I
Yeah.
think that would be a great thing to really kind of couple into it.
Yeah.
Um, just knowing that we're really optimizing the environment to ourselves.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You could get one of those, there are these things that you can measure your HRV 24/7, but I don't want to touch anything like that because it's like, I don't put a wearable on anymore. I used to wear an Aura ring. I don't even wear that, even on
Yes,
airplane
yes.
mode. But yeah, that would be interesting. I know that there's some genetic tests. I know a guy that he actually does genetic testing for like special forces, and he can
Mm-hmm.
tell you whether or not genetically you're more sensitive to blue light, you're more sensitive to non-native EMFs. Like he can
Yes,
look at your genetics and tell you that too. So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we're all so uniquely
we
different.
are. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I've talked to Philip with Lila Q, and he's like, yeah, some people could literally sleep under a 5G tower and they're fine,
yeah.
because they're kind of so dialed in. But then you have people like my daughter who when Wi-Fi was on, you see a definite behavior difference. When there's like bright fluorescent lights, you see a huge behavior difference.
Yes.
And so there definitely are people that have different levels of sensitivity for sure.
And to so the goal is ultimately, though, if we can, like, just because we can sleep under a 5G tower doesn't mean we want
We
to
don't
either,
want to
right?
do that. Why would we?
Because and again, it's anything that we can do to really optimize and take it out, regardless whether
Yeah.
it's affecting us.
Yeah.
I think it's still a win-win.
Definitely.
But definitely not to be in fear of it. And I feel like it's my job as a builder and a consultant, doing assessments, because that's what I do more mainly now,
Right.
than building, is going out and doing these full assessments from basically top to bottom. And we're looking at everything that we just discussed on this interview, that it's really to come up with solutions,
Yeah.
like tech wellness, like, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, going back to like the hardwiring, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a new construction home.
Yeah.
There's ways to come up with external wiring, with some simple handyman type of work, to where
Yeah.
we could go in and get rid of the wireless. So the wireless routers, obviously, they put out a pretty high
Very
megawatt
high.
per square
Yeah.
meter. so they, especially if you if you have a shielded coating in the home, it's really not a good idea. You're better off not having, if you're just bound set, like, look, I just want a mold resistant home or whatever, I don't care about EMFs or whatever. Again, it's what whoever wants, I would still use caution. You're better off not putting a shielded coating in a room if you're going to want Wi-Fi. So if somebody wants Wi-Fi, then definitely don't even waste your time trying to mitigate any other forms of RFs or, EMF in that case.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely everything that we're discussing, because I was looking at everything more as the builder. But I was getting a really big request. I'm like, yeah, but what can I do to my existing home? I don't have that luxury.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of people listening of like, what can I do now? Because I'm not going to build a new home. I've been in this house. I'm not moving. So I think a lot of people are more interested in kind of mitigation. And I think hardwiring is probably one of the first things that I would do if I was in an existing home.
Absolutely.
We did that before we moved in here. Because you ideally want to do it when you're not at home, because they may have to take out some drywall and move some things around. But yeah, I would say hardwiring. And then once you've got that in place, possibly some shielding, would you say?
Yeah, it would be, again, if it's the goal of, the EMF mitigation, if you find some values that are just unusual high, or, if you have an outlet next to your bed, right? Without having to hire like an, EMRS, somebody that's coming in to help identify. Again, I'm just throwing stuff out there for just kind of mainstream, someone on a budget, invest into a meter. That's first and foremost too, is I think really to have some form of a meter to measure, and then eliminate. My advice would definitely be eliminate the Wi-Fi router, hardwire all your Ethernet lines in. That would definitely, and then shielding, then it would get into the shielding at that point, shielding strategic areas, just like you had mentioned. So that would definitely be the first thing that I would do if I had an existing home, and what could I do to really optimize it from the RF and an EMF perspective, for sure.
Definitely.
There was one thing of just water treatment. You mind if I touch base on that one a little bit?
Absolutely. Please do. Yeah.
So it's really, there's a lot of really good options out there, and there's a lot of great companies out there, that have different types of systems. I take a little bit more of a practical approach. And again, you have a great interview with Natural Actions. I thought that was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, Jonathan really opened up, shared a lot of information. And really, he's very humble about his technology, but it's a very legitimate technology, and it's simple. We're not, you got to really understand all the differences of, RO systems, and, sometimes they could be a little critical for an entire, because I knew people that were putting in this $50,000 RO systems for the entire home, and then it actually compromises the plumbing and things like that too. So too much of what seems to be a good thing could actually go the other way. So I take a real practical approach of, like, I use his passive ionization technology, of just simply, structuring the water, if you will, into the home. So I like it to come into the home structured, and then you can do different forms of filtration, using very sophisticated, probably some of the best carbon blocks in the industry. So I do a lot of carbon block filtration. That takes out a lot of these chemicals that are, that people are concerned with as well. So what I'll do is again, it could be on an existing or a new home. It's just simply the main water line coming into the house. You have an option to hook in their technology with their passive ionization. Doesn't take up any room. And then you can put a whole house filter at that point of carbon. And the cool thing about this passive ionization technology, even if you have hard water, it tames the water, so it doesn't react and leave the hard water stains. Like, it almost, I wouldn't say it eliminates, depending on how hard the water is. In Arizona, we have pretty hard water, but I don't have the hard water stains running their technology, not even having to put a water softener in, which is really cool.
Wow, that's
You know,
very
because
cool.
if we could really simplify the amount of plumbing, the technology, all the hardware, we don't need all the bells and the whistles and the lights and
No,
this and that, you know, just come up with
no,
the simple system of having water coming out of your tap, like as if it felt like it came out of the Swiss Alps, kind of an experience.
yes,
And the nice thing about the showers too is because we're doing a whole house filter, and with the passive ionization and the structured water, now when you're bathing, you know, you're bathing in this water, it's beautiful. It feels so good on the skin. It feels so healthy. I mean, it literally feels like you're out in nature underneath a waterfall. That's truly the experience. That's just not my, I've heard that from numerous people. And so I put in several systems and definitely experienced it firsthand. And then of course you could further filtration specifically to drinking. Even you could start breaking the micron down size with filters, even putting a filter under the cabinet. You know, and then you could just run just a spigot specifically for the drinking water. So you can have very clean filtered structured water coming in for bathing. And then of course, then you could even refine it even more so with just a simple cabinet unit. You know, if you wanted to do RO for specific things, you could, but I don't really see.
I don't really like RO.
You know, I don't really see a need for it once you get into these. So it's really simplifying. We don't need to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, we can come in with just a real simple system, depending on what the water quality is, and then also too, I like to use a lot of UV systems it's just an extra precaution to take out any potential, you know, because a lot of the times you could be on treated water, you know, from the city or municipalities. So it's always nice to have a little bit of a fail-safe UV light system as well tied in. So one other thing to note, kind of going into the mold, but it's the water filtration. So when you're building these systems, if whether they're the inside of the home or the outside of the home, it's really important that you find ways to watertight these areas. This is a big one too, because once you start getting into mechanical fittings, which I'll kind of tie into a little bit of a segue if you like at the end here, we can talk about, you know, what can a client, what can a homeowner do to, you know, mitigate and check for certain things and leaks that could lead to certain things. But anywhere you have a mechanical fitting, a tie-in, you know, it's a potential for a leak. It's just how it is. And especially once you start getting into water treatments, because you have filters and just different types of components. So I like to build everything in a watertight environment and potentially with the drain. So if there was anything to go wrong, and also to install a flow control shutoff valve to the house. So if there was any, this is huge.
We've got one of those because we've had flooding in our house before. My daughter she likes, it's fun for her to turn on water sources and leave them on. And so our old house probably flooded 3 separate times because of that. So we've got that now in the new house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was something I spent a lot of money on. Was a sensor, so that if there's too much water, and which it can get annoying sometimes. Now I think it kind of knows our water patterns, but
yes, it'll shut everything off.
Right, because I'd be like, dang it, I'm trying to take a bath. You know.
Yes, they've come a long ways because they were pretty sensitive early on, and of course they come Wi-Fi enabled now, you know. So
exactly.
I stick with the more simpler one. So they're still perfecting that, you know, but for the most part, like you were saying, if it identifies the water turning on and off, like it's kind of intriguing how they work, but it's definitely, you know, like I'm sure maybe a lot of your audience knows this, but maybe they don't. I don't want to assume that, but you know, 24 hours. You have 24 hours to clear out moisture before it can actually start to develop mold.
Wow. Okay.
That quick. So that's a big one. Again, it's not as, you know, I don't want to scare anybody, but it's just if there's a flood, take immediate action to call your insurance company, you know, get somebody in there immediately.
Our old house, anytime we had a flood, like it was like same day, we got to get somebody in there. they're vacuuming the water. And then we have these giant dehumidifiers and fans
Yes.
in our house for like 2 weeks, which drove me insane. But it's like it's a health hazard to have that mold in your house. You know, you can't do it.
Absolutely. It's a pretty important piece, you know, talking about flooring. Okay. Because we're kind of really coming into something here. So like even like carpet, there's just nothing.
Wait, I hate carpet.
I'm sorry, everyone. There's just nothing good about carpet.
I hate it. We took it out of this house. Like, nope, can't do it.
Yeah. Even if you have to have a rug, that's fine, you know, but at least a rug you can manage. But carpeting, there's just too many factors. Dander from pets, you know. So if you have pets and carpeting, just that and alone, it's an issue. You know, again, we're talking about air filter, and air scrubbers, which is constantly helping clean it. But if you could really mitigate and get rid of the source in the beginning, you're just working on that much of a closer towards your goal of optimization of air quality in the house. But again, even like laminate wood, just again, you know, it's talking about leaks through the house, a washer and dryer, you know.
Oh gosh.
And this is just a little bit of a takeaway for the audience too. If just, you know, the drain line for the washer, you know, because washers kind of shake in their spin cycle. If this is just this simple, if your drain outlet isn't fastened securely into the drain, it could pop out and you could be pumping water all over that you don't even know behind your washer, you know. And if you had like a wood laminate, you know, we know what can happen within 24 hours. So these are just kind of like the takeaways that we really want to make sure that all of our valves and our connections through the house are check them once a month, you know. Take a flashlight, go in there and inspect that. So for me, for like flooring, I look at like hard surfaces to where, you know, you can't really get a mold, you know, so stones, not that it's total resistant, but stone or tile or concrete, these are great hard surfaces to really help at least water getting under the flooring system to where it has to be pulled out, you know. So
well, this is I mean, it's a lot.
I was gonna share just a little bit. Do you mind if I just give you some takeaways for your audience?
Please do. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Because since I was talking about, you know, the water filtration and containing water, whether it's inside, outside. But even on the inside, we discussed the washer, but the areas that we want to really look for, because I think we kind of covered enough on the EMFs and the RFs as far as just the basic things to do on an existing home. Light bulbs. You know, we can shop light bulbs, and you know, you just got to do your due diligence. But there's some light bulbs out there. Finding compatible dimmers, you know, to really customize every room of, you know, what color spectrums you want. You know, looking at those 1600 again, all the way to 3000 if you want to hire a light during the
brightness,
day. But you know, so that covers that aspect. But you know, going through the house, we want to look at the obvious areas, you know, toilets, right? Are they sealed well? Are they bolted to the floor well? You know, we're looking at the valves. Are the valves secure? Are the hoses tightened? We're looking at the valves anywhere there's a valve, you know, under the sink, in the kitchen, garbage disposals, make sure that the lines are cleared, dishwashers, making sure that the lines are cleared, the bathrooms, you know, the toilets, again, the sinks under the, in the bathrooms, you know, drainage around the house too. Like, if,
that's huge.
That's actually a pretty big one.
It is.
Because the way that we're building the homes, it's designing the home to shield water away, get away. So having proper grading, making sure water's not flowing. I've seen numerous cases. I've been doing concrete a lot of years, and you'd be surprised how sometimes there wouldn't even be the right slope. And so the water's hitting the concrete coming back in, and it's sitting against all your windowsill, you know, all your door sills. And sitting up against the foundation, and then this water seeping into the foundation. So homes are designed to have like types of weep screeds or weep holes around the bottom perimeter. So it's doing a visual inspection. I think we kind of, a lot of us take a little bit for granted our homes, like, well, okay, it's built, it's going to support us for years and years and years. No, there's a lot of maintenance required in a home, right? And
Oh
I
my gosh,
really
yeah.
feel, it's our due diligence to really, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's like, just walk the perimeter, look around, make sure that the water's not just sitting, make sure that there's a clean inch or two around the perimeter of all the sills of the house, just to make sure that the water's draining. So if we're having water and rains, the water's draining away from that. That's a big one. That's really a big one. If you can, not that I'm encouraging anybody to just go get a ladder and jump on the roof or anything, but having somebody come out just and inspect, or if you can, do a visual inspection of the roof, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, windowsills, windows,
oh gosh,
window frames, roofing, transitions of roofing where you have chimneys or stacks or vents. We didn't really get into venting, but that's a really important thing too. So so these are the things, just the visual inspections of the home, the perimeter, all the plumbing, a roof inspection, without getting more into, a specialist coming in. And that's what I do a lot of assessments too, is we come in there, I'm looking again from the top to bottom, and we're going really in depth using all the boreholing to looking inside of a wall. We're using infrared guns. Again, we're measuring everything, relative humidity from the indoor, outdoor, mold spore sampling.
Wow.
But I think what I shared was just enough simple takeaways to where if there is an issue, local contractor, handyman, these are things that could be simply remedied, before you start going into further applications.
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely going to be calling you when we get that piece of land out in the country in the next couple of years and build that new house. That's our goal we've been talking about, because I think it is a little more challenging when you try to retrofit something, but starting from the ground up is definitely ideal.
Believe it or not, it's easier. Everyone's like, well, isn't it easier to remodel? No, it's harder. New construction, you can plan it out. And if it's done right, it actually just makes things a lot easier for sure.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, where can people find you if they want to hire you or just learn? I know you've got some amazing presentations and things. If people kind of want to explore more of your work, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. Synergy 360 is my website, and that's spelled SENERGY 360. And the site, we've done some updates to where now we've broken it down into, you can just click right on to assessments. And I travel all over the country to do assessments on any home. And that's the core. Like that's the beginning. So if somebody wants to know all the way from top to bottom what the condition of their home is, with a thorough, in-depth report on all the steps to take, I definitely offer that. You can also, on the site, on the portal, you can click on new construction, or you can click on remodeling. And I do a full, thorough breakdown of all the things that we discuss and what we mitigate and what we look for. Working again with homeowners, architects, builders, but really advocating to build healthy homes. So it's pretty thoroughly broke down. And then of course you can just reach out through there. I'm on Instagram too, Synergy 360. And I'm happy to, for your audience, of course, just anybody reach out. I'm happy to do a free consult over the phone and just share. We can go a little bit more in depth into the pointers that we just discussed today, for sure.
Awesome. Well, this is super, super helpful. And I think it's definitely got a lot of people thinking maybe in a different line about their home and their living environment. So I really appreciate your time today.
Oh my God, it's a true honor to be here to really spread this message and to build alliance with you and God bless you for all the work that you're doing to, have people like me on the show to bring this awareness, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.